we started a whole series because I want you to have an amazing marriage. I want your marriage to be frustration-free, drama-free, and just absolutely boring. Because let's just be honest, great marriages are boring. They don't make nighttime dramas or sitcoms over great marriages. It's all about just bad marriage. So I want your marriage just to be boring and your relationships to be boring, and boring because they're so good and so great. And so that was the premise for the whole series that we started with you a few weeks ago. When we started the series, we talked about just loving people the right way and being loved the right way. We talked about how in our culture and society, we're kind of trained up to believe that if we find the right person, if we marry the right person, everything will turn out right. And that's just kind of the culture that we live in. That's the world that we live in. And so the pressure point or the stress on that sermon was that we need to become the right kind of a person. Become the kind of a person, in fact, the question we've wanted to answer is, are you becoming the kind of person the person you want to marry wants to marry? I know that's kind of a mouthful, but that's where it's at. And then the second week, men, you need to listen to this. You can go online, go to our website. There's a YouTube link there, and you can watch the second one, all about honoring women and the proper way to treat women. And ladies, don't nudge him right now and say, go watch it. Just let him get it figured out on his own. You can bookmark it on his page or whatever. But that was the second week, just talking about honoring. And then last week was kind of the dad talk about sex. There, I said it. Okay, anyway, we talked about that it isn't just physical, it's deeply emotional. If it was just physical, people wouldn't be emotionally wounded like they are. And so we just kind of camped out on that whole thing last week, that the culture that we live in says it's only physical. As long as nobody gets hurt and you use protection, it's all good, it's all okay. And we kind of drilled down on that whole thing a little bit. Today, we're not going to go deep at all. We're just going to be extremely, extremely practical today. So if you are already married and you know somebody who's single, this is your opportunity to take some notes. Not everything I share with you today is original with me. You listen to people, you watch things, you observe things. Some of it you just learn on your own. And if you want to jot down notes and then hand it to somebody who's single, or keep it so that when you're trying to have a talk with your son or daughter, you can be reminded of this whole thing. So that's just where we're going to go. So we're going to be extremely practical. If you want to go deep, we'll go deep next Sunday, all right? But today we're just going to be shallow and practical. How's that? All right. So anyway, in fact, we're just going to look at two small passages in the book of Proverbs in just a few minutes. Now, here's where we're going to go. All across this country, every Saturday, in many, many towns and cities all across this great land in which we live, a man and a woman will walk down to the front of a church, and they will stand in front of a pastor with their friends and their family standing behind them. And at some point during this ceremony that we call a wedding, they will join hands, they'll look at each other, and they'll start to make some promises. And some of the promises the pastor has prepared for them: repeat after me, and then, I do, and I promise, and I will, and honor, cherish, obey, cook, clean house, keep whatever the promises are. Some people write out their own promises that they make, and they intend at every wedding, they fully intend to keep every one of those promises. At least I think they do. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt that they plan to keep the promise, or they just want to perform it well in front of the crowd. I don't know, but they want to keep the promise, so they go through the whole promise thing, but they're promises that they will never be able to keep throughout their marriage. In reality, and married people would say, yeah, that's true. We made a lot of promises at the altar, and I couldn't keep all of those promises. Maybe you're on the second marriage or the third marriage, and you couldn't keep the promises, and here's the reason why we can't keep the promises: because we haven't made any preparation. You see, promises never trump preparation. Your promises never trump preparation. A runner can promise to get the gold medal. He can promise to win the gold medal or the blue ribbon. He can make all the promises he wants to, but if he doesn't prepare for the race, he's not going to win. Students, you can tell your mom and dad, I promise I'll get A's. I promise. You put your hand on the textbook, you know the whole thing. I promise to get straight A's. If there's no preparation, it doesn't make any difference. You can't promise your way through that whole situation. I could tell you next week, I'm going to preach to you in Mandarin Chinese. Why was that funny? That wasn't even meant to be funny. Because you just know it's an impossibility. You see, promises never trump preparation. If I'm going to preach to you in Mandarin Chinese, I better start cracking the books and get myself prepared. The same thing holds true in marital situations. You can make all the promises that you want to at the front of the church, in front of all of your friends, and in front of the pastor. And then you make these promises, and you're all googly-eyed, you got sweaty hands holding on there, and the pastor says, repeat after me, and then you go through the whole oath thing, and you probably don't even remember your oath, all right? You just don't even remember. You just remember looking into her eyes and his eyes and the whole thing, and it was a great celebration that day. Food, cake, presents, money, honeymoon, it was all great. And then you get about 2 weeks into the marriage, 3, 4, maybe 6 months into the marriage, and you go, this is hard. Like, this is nothing like our wedding day. This is hard. He leaves his underwear hanging on the doorknob. What's up with that? I didn't know, That whole thing, this is just, if you knew the habits, and it just gets really hard. And so you start to discover real life. Now, you plan to make all those promises, but you can't fulfill the promises because you didn't work on preparing for that day. You can't promise your way past lack of preparation. You can't promise your way through lack of preparation. Just because you say I do doesn't mean that you're able to. Just because you say I do doesn't mean that you will do, And every Saturday people make these promises, and then the married couples, somewhere there's a bump in the marriage, there's a bump in the relationship, and then there's the shaking of the fingers. You promised at the altar. You said that you would, and you made all of these promises. Well, I don't remember making those promises. I was just thinking about how good you looked in the dress and the honeymoon afterwards. That's all I was thinking about, And so that's where the whole thing begins in problems. And we fall in love, and we think when we fall in love we can do anything, and love conquers all. And then the only people laughing are married people, by the way. Okay? All right. How many know that love is just blind? I don't need to prepare. I mean, we're in love, right? We've got chemistry. We talked about the whole chemistry experiments of the first week. We got chemistry. We're in love, and we don't have any problems. We don't need to prepare. We're prepared. We got love, and if you got love, you can do anything. You can it'll just all work out. And then the time to work on preparing for your marriage is not after you're married. It's while you're still single. So I'm going to share some things with single people today. And married people, you can either listen or you can check your Facebook status. It's really up to you, or you can tweet the message. I don't care. It doesn't matter. But here's what I want you to know. If you yourself, if single people, just look at students, I don't care, students, high school students, single people, if you are working today on preparing yourself for marriage, it will set you up to be looking for somebody else who's also preparing themselves to get prepared for marriage. Because it just trains your mindset. You're not going to marry Mr. Bozo. It doesn't matter how good he looks. If you're not preparing for me because I'm valuable and I'm worth it, and if you want me, you're going to prepare yourself for me. If you're not preparing yourself for me, then shove off. There's another guy better than you waiting for me. All the girls said, thank you. All right. Boy, the girls have low voices. It's amazing. All right, so here's where we're going to go. We're going to look at a couple of passages from Proverbs, so practical when it comes to relationship. Not just marital relationships, but all relationships and really in all facets of life. So Proverbs chapter 14, verse number 8, here's how it reads in the New Living Translation. The prudent, and I'll explain prudent in just a moment, but the prudent understand where they're going. All right, but fools deceive themselves. Now, I understand prudent is probably a word that you have not used in your vocabulary. I would dare say that if you're a sophomore in high school, you didn't walk down this hallway and say, have you been prudent and prepared for that exam? I bet you just didn't talk about that. But here's what it means to be prudent. Prudent people are people who just understand that all the dots in life are connected. That the decisions and the choices that I make today, because remember, today will one day become your past, and your past follows you into your future. Prudent people understand that the choices I make today are going to have an impact on tomorrow. They understand that the way I eat today has an impact on how I live tomorrow. They understand that how I have relationships today and what I do in relationships today, somewhere is going to manifest, it's going to be fulfilled, it's going to have an effect later on in the future. They understand that how I deal with finances today, that all the dots of life are connected, and how I manage finances today is going to make an impact on how I live tomorrow. Prudent people understand that. And so prudent people take the proper steps, the proper measures to get to where they want to go. They know, prudent people just know, since all the dots of life are connected, if I want to get there, I have to start in this direction doing these things to get there. Fools, however, are people who probably know the same information that prudent people do. They just don't care because it'll work out different for me. It'll just be all different from me. In fact, this relationship is different from me. Mom and Dad, you don't know him like I know him. And yeah, that happened to you. And I know you had this experience. And thanks for the talk, Mom and Dad. And I know that you had a bad experience. And Mom and Dad and the whole thing. And just with the relationships and it all crumbled in second, third marriage. No, but it's different this time. It's different. It's just totally different. And you know why it's different? Because love is blind, all right? That's just why it seems all different. The fool they deceive themselves thinking, you know what? It doesn't matter. I can do the same thing as you, but it'll turn out different because it's a different situation than your situation. And even though they're doing the same things, they just expect different results. And that's the fool. That's the fool. Now, that applies not just to relationships. That's just everything that we go through in life. He goes on to say in verse number 15, same chapter, verse 15, I love this. Only simpletons. Now, you probably haven't called anybody a simpleton. Well, maybe you called your brother a simpleton. But only simpletons believe everything that they're told. But the prudent, here's that word again, the prudent carefully consider their steps. Now, here's what I love about this. You fall in love. When you fall in love, I mean, like when we're together, single people, just hear me out. There's chemistry, right? There's this twitterpation, your heart starts to palpitate, and you just get all excited, and a little flushed in the face, a little red, and because there's chemistry. And when there's chemistry and you're all in love, it's all going to work out. And you know what? Love is blind, and it really doesn't matter about their past and who they are now and what they become. Because you know what? Here's the amazing thing. I know that God was invited. I've been praying that God would bring me him. I've been praying for him. I've been praying. And you know what? You never guess what happened. He walked in, and right when he walked in, guess what song was playing? My favorite song. Well, it turns out it was his favorite song. And we started to talk, and guess what? We've got the same initials. I know it was God. It was just amazing, It was just an incredible thing. And so all of a sudden, you're just convinced that God brought you guys together. And every time he pulls up in his car, that song is on the radio. And did I mention his initials are my initials? And in fact, they're the same initials of his make of car. It's just an amazing thing. I mean, we just start connecting all the dots and thinking this is a God thing because love is so blind. And then we start to have problems. We start to have all these problems. And we're thinking, you know what? But I can change him. I can change him. I can change her. I can change him and I can change her. And the prudent says, no, because the reason I need to change you is because, well, yeah, you got a past. We've got great chemistry. Oh, and we're together. Man, never in the history of love has there been love like our love. Now, I know he's got a record and I know there's a warrant for his arrest. All right. Okay. But we love. Okay? And I know that she's got a history, and I know there's this thing with her mama, and I know all about all of these things in her past, and coincidentally, there's a warrant for her arrest too. I mean, it's just fate, and this is great. But you know what? We can change that. We'll change that when we get married. It'll all change when we get married. It'll get better when we get married. And the prudent person says, wait. You got a past? Gambling? Pornography? Indebtedness, lying, trouble with the law, list goes on and on and on. Let's talk about that past before we talk anything about a future. Because, see, the prudent person understands steps. They understand if I start taking a step in a direction in this relationship with this person right now, it's going to take me someplace I never intended to go and I don't want to go. And so people try to explain away bad behavior all the time because love is blind. And listen, this is students, listen, this is why your mom and dad freak out when you bring him or her home. If you feel like you got to keep the relationship secret because you're afraid mom and dad just freak out, look, mom and dad have such a different perspective on your relationship. They see things from beginning to end that you can't see or you're unwilling to see because love is blind. And we try to explain, well, the reason that he's on his third job this week is, well, this boss and that boss and, well, the company folded, and, the reason for the indebtedness is, well, because he had a bad boss, he had to use a credit card, started living on the credit card, well, and then he got into debt really bad, and the reason he had to start selling drugs was to pay off the credit card debt. And, we just go on and on and on, trying to explain away bad behavior. To which, if you have to explain away bad behavior, I'm standing up here listening to the story going, stop! Listen to yourself already. Really? You think it's going to get better from this point on? I know that I sound like your dad, don't I? All right. We are far from over. I'm going to sound a lot more like your dad before we're done. But the prudent just carefully consider their steps. They realize that if I enter into this relationship, it could take me places I don't know if I want to go. A person's past has more power than a person's promise. You need to remember that. Now, if you're single, you try to find somebody who's working on their commitment to Christ. You try to find somebody who's trying to clear up their past. You work on somebody who's trying to perfect themselves, and it'll just make a better relationship with you. Isn't that the kind of person you want to find? You don't want to marry some slouch, some bozo, some dumbo. You want to marry somebody who's sharp and has it together. Don't you settle for second best. Listen, if you're young, single, if you're a teenager here today and whatever, don't you ever, when you get married, don't you settle for second best. I'm telling you, how many people come to my office, they're contemplating divorce, they've been through divorce, and I'll ask them this question. Let me ask you this. On your wedding day, before you walk down the aisle to meet him at the front, was there anything in the back of your mind, any red flags? And before I finish asking the question, they go, yeah, I knew it was wrong. But I did it anyway because the invitations were out. I didn't know if anybody else would marry me. I mean, they all got a story. They filled in the blank. They settled for second best. So what I'm going to do today is give you some very practical things. If you're thinking about a relationship, if you plan to get married, even if you're married, you can write these things down and tell them to your children. If you're married, let me just say this to you. If you're married today, let me just encourage you with this. A couple of things I want you to be really good at doing. If you're a married person, you should be an amazing forgiver. An amazing forgiver. Now, ladies, if he is not treating you correctly, then he needs to listen to the second week of this sermon series, all right? You need to protect yourself. But I'm just telling you, in any normal marriage, you need to be an amazing forgiver, giving them the benefit of the doubt, filled with grace for the other person, because that's how you want them to treat you. That when you are performing well and things are going really, really well in your marriage, stand off to the side and just applaud them and say, great job. I am so fortunate to be married to you. Okay? Now, that's all the advice I have for married people. Single people, I'll talk to you now. Married people, if you want to go get coffee, go home, go out to lunch, that's fine. So the rest of this is just for single people. But married people, you can listen to this. Single people, you can listen to this if you want to. Number one, let me give you some practical advice here. You'd expect to hear this from a pastor or a dad. Number one, resolve your unresolved childhood issues. Did I just hear all the married people go, amen, or something? I don't know what they said. I just heard a bunch of married people. Listen, resolve your unresolved childhood issues. Here's the reason why. Because if you don't, you're going to be so many months into your marriage, and he or she is going to say something, and there's going to be conflict, and you're going to wonder, where in the world did that come from? In fact, let me show you something that sometimes I show married people if you come to my office and we talk a little bit. Here's the reason why. Here's the reason why you need to resolve unresolved. I'm going to show you a diagram. This is a secret diagram. Don't tell anybody about this diagram, okay? What happens in this church? I want to see if you're here. All right, diagram's right here. There's you, and then there's your parent, and there's all this drama in between you and your parent. I love saying it, there's drama with you and your mama, all right? There's just something going on. You say, there's no drama. I sent her a Mother's Day card. Well, when's the last time you talked to her? 87, all right? There's drama, there's something that's gone on, and I see this all the time. People come into my office, and there's problems, and there's difficulties, and here's what happens. Next slide. If you don't resolve those things, guess who takes the brunt of your problems with your mama? Your spouse does. And they're wondering, why all of a sudden, why is she so angry? Why is he so angry? I didn't see this when we're dating. And he's going, why doesn't she just get it? And she's saying, why doesn't he just get it? And then problems start to arise in the marriage. And then you come to my office and I start asking you questions. What seems to be the problems in the marriage? She never talks. He never talks. She always does this. He never does this. And we start kind of going around the whole thing and trying to narrow it down. And then I'll ask you, well, tell me about your relationship with your mom. Tell me about your relationship with your dad. I don't know, whatever kind of thing's going on, And then suddenly the other spouse is going, yes, finally somebody has discovered this and they're talking about it, And if there's unresolved issues with your mama, you're going to bring it out into your marriage. You'll start taking it out on your spouse. You'll say one thing, it's just so many months of the marriage, and you'll say something just really innocent like, hey, let's just can we leave a few minutes early to the whatever? And then all of a sudden, boom, there's World War III in the house and an explosion and a fight. You go, where did that come from? That's drama with your mama. That's where it came from. Just saying. So resolve those issues before you get married. If you're already married, if you got issues with your mama and your daddy, you need to take care of those because your spouse is suffering as a result of your drama between you and your parents. So that's what you need to do. The second thing is this. Ladies, let me just talk to you for a little bit. Ladies, just hear me out on this, right? Don't dress like a commodity. And don't put up with being treated like one. Now, we talked a lot about this in week number 2 of the series. Ladies, let me just talk to you for a little bit here, okay? This can be kind of a sensitive, tender subject. So let me just say, ladies, don't go fishing for men with your bodies, okay? Here's the reason why. If I don't know a lot about fishing or anything like that, but fishermen, just bear with me. I'll show my ignorance to you in just a moment, all right? When you bait a hook, what determines how you bait the hook? It depends on what you want to catch, right? You bait the hook differently for different kinds of fish. Now, look, ladies, if you're trying to hook a man, you're trying to bait a man, you're trying to catch a man with your body, guess what kind of guy you're going to catch? A bottom troller. I'm just saying, all right? He's going to be the guy just going for the catfish at the bottom of the creek, all right? And if you have to bait him with your body and he treats you like a piece of meat before you're married, guess how he's going to treat you after you're married? The same way. So ladies, here's what I want you to discover. I want you to discover this. Let a man fall in love with the beauties of your character, with your virtue and your integrity and your godliness and your character and your honesty. Let him be attracted to those things. The body, all that stuff, that comes later in the marriage, and that'll all be just fine and it'll all work out. Now, let me just say this to you, ladies. As cute as you are today, and can attract a man with your body, as cute as you are today, one day, cellulite comes knocking on your door. Okay? Just saying. Doesn't happen for men. All right, okay, so that's what you need to know. That's what you need to know. God created you. Ladies, God created you so wonderful, so beautiful. Don't just be willing to give that away to anybody, because here's what's going to happen if you do. You're gonna bait guys with your body, and then you're gonna get disgusted because he's just all hands and that whole kind of thing, and you're gonna say, "Men are disgusting. They're all alike." Well, no, they're not all alike. You just go fishing with the same bait all the time, so you catch the same kind of guy. All right? Enough on that. Let's move on. Next thing, work on your debt. Work on your debt. Before you get married, it's so much easier to work on your debt before you get married than it is after you get married, because after you get married, you got to buy a boat, all right? Or have a dog or a cat, and those things cost money. So just work on the debt before you get married. It's kind of fun. When Robin and I still reference our first early months and years of marriage, we had our married debt, and then we had our single debt. And look, single debt is just baggage that you bring into the marriage. And ladies, let me just encourage you that if you're worth marrying, you're worth this guy working on his character. And if he's got to work on debt and you got to go live with mama to work on debt, whatever the case is, you just work on those things. So if you're dating a bozo, look, he might have a 95-inch TV screen with an incredible sound system and an Xbox 360 and an awesome car, but if he's working at McDonald's to support that habit and he's going deeper in debt all the time, you tell bozo, just go live with mama, become financially responsible, and then when you're financially responsible, you can come marry me, okay? So you can just do that. Work on the debt now. I know how it goes on the other side of that whole thing. Ladies, you're saying, "Oh, but he loves me so much, and he said he'd take care of all of my debts for me. He'd pay off the car. He'd pay off my credit card debts, put a down payment on a house for me. It'll just be an amazing thing." That's great that he took care of your debts, but you're still financially irresponsible. Work on being financially responsible before you enter into that marital situation. It'll save you so much problems, because if you come into the office and you talk to a counselor or to a pastor, there's usually it's communication, it's sex, or it's finances. That's what we're going to talk about if you come in the office. So let's just deal with the financial thing at the upfront. So those are just really simple things. Another thing you can do is just break your bad habits. If you've got some bad habits, just break them now, because marriage won't fix those problems. I know that love is blind. We're thinking, when I marry him, I can change him. Look, he is not your project. She is not your project. What is bad now, when you're in a dating situation, if it's bad now, if it bugs you a little bit, it's huge when you get married, right? All the married people are just nervously laughing. They're not even looking at their spouse, right? They just know. But whatever is good when you're dating is great when you're married. If it's good when you're dating, it's great when you're married, but you're not going to fix them. I just love the light bulb look when a couple is sitting in my office and they're going through and he's got this problem and he does this and he does that and she doesn't do this and she never does that and the whole thing. And then I'll look at her and I'll go, you picked him, you married him, you got him, and you're not going to change him. It's like a revelation, like, I'm not going to change. No, you're not going to change him, and you're not going to change her either. And then it's almost like they're mad. Well, I've been trying to change them, you know. Look, you're not going to change them. That doesn't mean they won't change, but you're not going to change them. They're not your project. So you need to deal with the bad habits now. Look, if he's got a porn problem now, it's not going to get fixed when he gets married. Marriage doesn't fix porn problems. If you got an indebtedness problem now and you got 5 credit cards, 10 credit cards, 7 credit cards, and they're all maxed out now, marriage doesn't fix that. If you've got a gambling addiction, it doesn't get fixed when you get married. None of those problems get repaired when you get married. You need to deal with them before you enter into that marital relationship. Otherwise, you're going to come to the pastor's office and see me, and then you have to take me out for coffee and donuts or something. I don't know. But anyway. Okay, just saying. All right. Just remember, they're not a project. The next thing you'd expect a pastor to say, and that is this: just put off the physical before marriage. Put off the physical before marriage. There's something in the Bible about just not lighting that fire or that passion before it's time, and you just don't need to go there. You just need to walk away from those situations, because when you enter into a marriage relationship, you want to enter in without any regrets. You just want to go in with a clear conscience and a free mind. And along with that is the next one. Avoid living together. Avoid living together. Now, look, if you're already living together, I'm going to probably make some of you mad. And look, I'm just going to tell you what statistics say. And I know the whole thing on stats. Stats only work for people who want to use them to defend their position, right? But there's just a load of information out there that says statistically, a couple that lives together before marriage is 8 times more likely to divorce. That's what stats say. Now here's where I'm at on the whole living together thing. Here's why I care about your heart. In fact, we started with this verse a month ago as we started with Proverbs 4:23. Guard your heart above all else, because everything about life flows from there. So I want to guard your heart from pain and anguish. When it comes to living together, I'm telling you how a man and a woman approach living together is so completely different. And I want to spare you that kind of pain, because here's what a woman is thinking. If we move in together and we live together, this is a step closer towards marriage. She's thinking long term. She's thinking relationship. She's thinking children. She's thinking family. She's thinking about security, because she wants that kind of security. She is moving towards a long-term relationship. The guy, on the other hand, the guy is thinking, let's just check this whole thing out and see how it works before we get married, if I want to get married. It's 2 totally different approaches. And guys, let me just tell you, and I know I'm going to make some of you angry and upset, and you probably won't come back to church, but I love you enough to have to say this. Guys, the thing that bothers me the most about just living together is you get to enjoy all the benefits of marriage without any of the commitment or obligation. You can step out, walk out, and just leave any old time that you want to. And that's not what she's looking for. She's looking for security. And I'm telling you, if she's good enough to live with, she's good enough to marry. All right? If she's good enough to live with, she's good enough to marry. All right? If you have no intentions of marrying her, just walk away right now and spare her the extra pain and anguish of just dragging this whole thing on, because she's thinking long term. He's just going, hey, I just love the chemistry living together. All right? So I'm just you'd expect to hear that from your dad or from a pastor. So I'm just saying it. All right? Now, let me talk to non-Christians today. I don't know where you are in a relationship with Christ, and we can use the term Christians, believers, followers of Christ. So if you're not a follower of Jesus, you're not a Christian today, let me just talk to you for a little bit. Here's the next clear point I want to put up before you. If you have no intentions of becoming a Christian, don't marry one. Okay? Here's why. Because this is a covert operation. You don't know this. The reason that he or she is going to marry you is because they plan to change you, right? You don't know this, but they know this. It's a secret plan. I know how to make them a Christian. And here's what's going to happen. When you get married, they're going to expect you to change. They're going to expect you to come to church with them on Sunday morning. They're going to expect you to lead the family in prayer. They're going to expect you to open your Bible and read it. And then if that isn't uncomfortable enough for you, when children come along, they're going to expect you to come along with her or him to the church and stand before the church on Child Dedication Sunday and stand there and look or act or pretend like you're a Christian while we dedicate ourselves and our children to the Lord. And so if you have no intentions of doing any of that, just break it off right now, okay? Just break it off. So just want to give you a heads up on that. If you're not a Christian and you're dating a Christian, just break up because they're going to expect you to become a Christian, all right? And then the last point I want to give you, you'd expect this to come from your pastor. Get involved in your local church. Single people, listen to me. Get involved in your local church. Here's why. This is an amazing thing. What better place is there to find somebody but in a church? I mean, this is a safer environment. And the incredible thing is you can see how he or she interacts in a gathering of people. You can see how they respond to God in his presence. And there's no country western music playing. I'm just telling you, we play great music here. You wouldn't want to find somebody in a location that plays country western music. That's just ew, right? Ew. And it's all dark and everything in there, and you don't know your way around that whole. You don't want to find somebody because you don't know how safe that is, all right? At least here it's daylight, and you can see what he drives. It's in the parking lot in daylight. If it's at a tavern, it's in the dark. It might be a Volkswagen Bug. You don't know, all right? So just saying, this is a safe environment to try to find somebody. Here's the incredible thing. When you start dating somebody, and it's great to date them in a group setting, here's why. Because he can be so nice to you when it's just the two of you. But when we're together with a group of people and friends, he's a jerk, and he treats me like garbage. Well, if he does that when you're dating, be prudent. Guess how he's going to treat you after you get married? The same way. This is a great place to find somebody. Moms and dads, husbands, wives, let me just tell you, same thing. This is a great place to interact with people and just to get to know one another. It's a safer environment. If you're already married, this is a great place to get connected and plugged in because it's a safe environment. Now, that's as deep as it goes today. So here's what we're going to do when we end. We're going to pray. I want to pray for you. I want you to have the most sensational marriage and relationship that is so boring that it never makes TV. I just want it to be an amazing relationship, that there's no drama, that you've worked on these things. If you're single, you're working on these things right now. That if you're single, that you value yourself enough that you would not settle for just whoever comes along, or because the momentum is already moving that direction, you're not just going to settle for somebody because you're worth too much to do that. You're worth too much to endure the pain of going through a separation and a divorce and all the things that go along with that. You're worth too much to do that. Your body, ladies, men, listen to me, your body is worth too much to the Creator and to the God to just give it away to anybody. Your heart has more value than you know and understand. Give it to the Lord and see what God does with that heart.